Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 2 of Pantheon. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we finally catch up with Chanda's situation, and we see that his boss found out about what he was doing, but I guess it was just... I guess they're all congruent together because it's like, right, they found out what he was doing, and maybe it was he was meeting with a company that's unrelated to logarithms, and no, because like his boss was talking about like there's a completely different company that he works for. What was it, like Alliance or something like that? So I'm curious. I'm assuming that Alliance and Logarithms are kind of in competition with each other, and maybe he was going to go work with Logarithms, but Alliance found out, his boss in particular, and so it's a situation of like, okay, so what I'm going to have to do is, we need you, and so we're going to download that brain of yours. And I do like, I keep making the upload comparison because there is a much more direct correlation in comparison. I feel like the manner in which they upload intelligence is the same way as in upload, because once again, if you've never seen upload, it's a lot faster in upload. It's not nearly as jacked up and bloody. Granted, it's like basically your entire head gets lasered and deleted, and it's like, yeah, nothing's left but your body. It's like they kind of do a similar thing, except this gets a lot more bloody and messier because it's not all at once, because it's still in the working the kinks out process. They got it a lot of the way there, but it's not all the way there. So it's like little by little, it basically like lasers your brain and downloads until literally your entire brain is gone. So that's the only way they can actually process this. That's the only means of it. So they can't just like directly copy your brain and it's all honky dory like, oh, your consciousness, like a copy of your consciousness or your mind exists. Like, it's like, no, they have to basically digitize your brain by destroying it in the process. That's the only way they can do it. So it's no like, oh, once you're digitized, oh, you could go living on your life. It's like, no, it's not at that point at least yet. They want to get there. So it's sad for Chada. And like I said, like at least with the show Upload, it's quick. Boom, your head's deleted, gone, boom. But the fact is that with this, it's a slow process, and you see like the toll it was taken on his brain because he was kind of saying like gibberish near the end. Like that was horrible, and just like the blood dripping. I don't know whether because it started like affecting his eye. His eye started bulging a little bit, and there was like blood, and it started like you could see like the blood kind of forming like behind his eye and stuff. It was horrendous. It's like, yo, this is some like heavy sci-fi horror in that, like almost body horror in that regard. But we actually don't know the full scope of how many people they've uploaded. We found out in this episode there's at least 3 people that have been, uploaded intelligence. But we don't know how far reaching that is. Because in the past, we kind of look back on the past and kind of spend more time with David and Ellen. And Ellen's explaining things to Maddie that David didn't willingly 100% sign up for this. It was just a situation of they came to David after the fact. Well, after he got sick and it's like, right, we need to do this. And David was a little more on board with it than Ellen was, because we start entering that complicated territory of Ellen feels like, right, once it's almost that situation of, what is a soul almost? We're borderlining on that conversation, that line between science and kind of religion to some extent. But it's like, right, even if it's you, it's not going to be you, because I won't be able to feel your touch or that warmth. It's simply going to be, she treats it as you're just a mindless machine. A machine made a copy of you, and it's pretending to be you. It won't actually be you, because it's like being in your body is what makes you you. When you're nothing but ones and zeros, all that does is that's just something taking what it knows about you and regurgitating back at me like you're alive. It's just you're nothing more. It's more than it's just a program wearing your skin. It's a very jacked up way to put it. So I think that's such an interesting conversation, because for Maddie it's like, no, it's still going to be Dad, but Ellen doesn't want to believe. She says she's doing this so that Maddie doesn't get her hopes up, but I think on some level it's also because she doesn't want to get her hopes up. But to be fair, she kind of had this like feeling before we even got to this point. David was kind of like, Ray, we can live together forever. And she's like, what, in a simulation? Because obviously they make the Matrix comparison, because it's like, oh, who's to say we aren't in a simulation already? But for her, it's like, it's that conversation of being able to die is a part of life. It sucks, but it is a part of the human experience. And if you live on forever and ever, you kind of leave behind a little bit of that specialness. Because the main person behind this, his name is Steven. He was the founder of Logarithms, voiced by William Hurt, because I knew I saw his name in the credits. And then, obviously, he sadly passed. So I don't know if this is one of the last things he did or not. Because we had a little tribute to him at the end of the episode. But, which I don't know why on some levels that makes that even sadder with that aspect to it, because that character Steven is going to, and William Hurt's now going to, so like it adds layers to that. Like, obviously was not intentional. It just like, it's sad that it just kind of happened that way. But once again, it's that conversation of like, if you, without death, you need that as a part of the human experience. But like Steven's whole point was making AI this whole uploaded intelligence versus AI. AI has no emotions. Uploaded intelligence, it's about having, because you can't have the full experience. Like, your mind and everything is one thing, but you need the human, you need the emotional connection, because without it, like, all that makes up a human isn't going to be complete. You need the emotions, you need the heart to make the mind complete to some extent. So I think that's a really intricate, deep dive into, once again, this is like, I could tell from the trailers, because a lot of stuff is out of context, but this is like, I feel like this is some deep level, once again, science, but also like science fiction. It's like they're going deep into it. So I just thought that was just kind of an interesting thing, and just how it puts Maddie and her mom at odds, because both of them want two different things out of this. She wants her dad back. She wants to believe that her dad's alive, but her mom's convincing her, and not just convincing her, but convincing herself that that's not the case. I even love, like, there's the element of the episode where it's like kind of tying into the whole conversation about death. What kind of sparked that was they were playing a video game and he died, and she's like, oh, like, we got to cheat. And it's like, oh, you can't kind of cheat life, we haven't been able to cheat death yet. But it's like, right, once again, like, Ellen's coming from the perspective of, it's part of the human experience, and if you take that away, you kind of take away some of the elements to make a human a human. And it's almost like life is beautiful and precious because it's finite, and you take that away, it can be that situation of you could lose a lot of that human element along the way. So I think that's kind of an interesting positive questions, that it's kind of throwing out there. And Maddie was talking to Caspian until the person that helped her out ended up contacting her, like, yo, stop talking to Caspian because he's being watched right now. So she kind of cuts off ties, but Caspian, having read her last message about uploaded intelligence, looks into it, which Logarithms is keeping an eye on him, so they know immediately, like, okay, he's looking into this. Now, what I thought was interesting, though, it seems like these projects are two separate things. Like, whatever Caspian's circumstances are, I don't know whether they're planning on trying to, they want to prove how capable he is, because they are test running him for upload intelligence. Because there's a part of my brain that's wondering, like, this is me going super hard in the paint, like down some science fiction route, that this is probably isn't what the case is going to be. But part of me wonders is, do you think that there's some level of, like, either Caspian, Steven's biological son, there's that, or is going to be a situation, maybe that could still be applicable, but I feel like, could it be Caspian is being set up to be the new Steven, in regards of they put him in a new bot, for whatever reason, was able to download his, I doubt that, because this is all about upload. I don't even think they're in the spectrum or even in the realm of wanting to go down the route of download. But like I said, this is my big brain conspiracy theory. Currently, I was thinking, what if Caspian is actually Steven, and he just doesn't remember his life as Steven, and he's just and they're keeping an eye on him because they're trying to allow him to grow and change so he can go back to kind of like get his intelligence to where it was as Steven, and that way to some extent they can have Steven back. Like, they need to mold him as Caspian first before they could get Steven back to some extent. Once again, that's kind of like my super out there theory, but I feel like even if it's not completely that, there could be some elements of that could correlate to this, that he's important somehow because whatever his circumstances are tied to Steven, whether it's like it's a biological thing of like his biological dad is Steven, or maybe he was born with Steven's DNA, or I don't know. Once again, I don't believe Carrie and Renee are his biological parents. They probably raised him as like maybe they are, or maybe he is aware like he's adopted. We still don't know, but we know that they are meant to keep an eye on him, and that like these little performances they put on are just that, performances, just for whatever purpose, and we just don't know what it is. To the point that he brought Hannah over for a project, and they put on this little stage performance of like, okay, he's here, let's do this whole thing, and they're having their arguments, and Carrie pushes Renee. And it's just kind of like, oh man, that's super jacked up. But there's this look on, like, Carrie actually feels bad about it. He's like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, no, I'm not okay. Or next time, he's like, did I push you too hard? She's like, push me too hard. Next time, push me harder to sell it more. So he kind of felt bad about that. And then when he sees Caspian walking away, Carrie kind of has this look almost like he regrets it. He feels bad about it. So that's why I'm like, maybe they are his biological parent. I'm flip-flopping so much, I can't help it. Like, we're just so in the dark about everything. But I'm curious, like, if they are his... Maybe it's not even just like... Either they could be actually his biological parents, or maybe Carrie just feels bad about all this stuff that's happening surrounding Caspian, that he's kind of being used, and just kind of feels bad that it's like, right, we're manipulating this kid. He doesn't even know what his future holds for him, what this is really all about. But circling back to the subject I had left, at Logarithms, like, Pope is talking to some other people, and that lady was complaining that the projects are colliding. So it seems like everything with David's one project, and then this whole Caspian thing is another. Because I would assume the David stuff is all about the upload intelligence, but Caspian seems like it's something else entirely. So that's where I'm like, maybe it is a thing of, going back to my point originally, because once again, they seem like they're all about upload intelligence and not downloading said uploaded intelligence into another body, because that way, then we kind of get into that altered carbon thing where it's just like, oh yeah, you can kind of live forever and you can just keep downloading yourself into a newer body, a younger body, type of situation. I mean, obviously, like, altered carbon's the first thing that comes to mind, but it's like plenty of things have kind of utilized that particular story, that form of immortality, just bouncing from body to body. I mean, I'm playing through the Kingdom Hearts games, and that kind of plays into that same element too of like body possession and stuff like that. Regardless. So it could be, since they're talking about two different projects, it could be that Caspian is kind of like more on the download, uploaded intelligence type of thing. I don't know. We'll see. I did like that when Maddie went to meet the source, she brought backup. And it's like, oh, I know who you are, Maddie. You're the freshman that hacked into so-and-so's phone and stuff like that. It's like, all right, is this amount for like a paper, this and that? It's like, no, I don't need you to do it. I'm going to the mall to meet someone, and I just need you to go with me. It's like, are you sure this isn't a sex thing? It's like, no, it's not a sex thing. It's just like, freshmen can't be off campus, and if you get, trafficked it's going to be on me. And she's like, no one's getting trafficked It's like, oh, like sadly that is a strong concern, but I love that that's just her concern of like, yeah, I'm going to be the one that has to face it if like someone like tells you in a sex trafficking and stuff like that. It's going to fall back on me, so, because you're kind of my responsibility. But meets with Cody, who is, was it Lori or Lauren, his wife. It turns out she's in the same circumstances, because there was the DDoS attack last episode that Caspian talked to Maddie about this episode. So it turns out she was the one responsible for that, because for so long she thought it was just her. So she's been in there for a while, and eventually she found out about David, and she tried to reach him, but she was only able to bring logarithm systems down for like 20 seconds. So she needs a more direct feed. So she needs to be inside the building, past their firewalls, because she can't access it from outside, but she can sure as hell access it from the inside. So when you actually read the article about what happened to her, like a little bit, just a little you can see on screen, they basically said like the accident, basically it was like a head-on collision. Her body was pretty much like almost like the wording was severed in half. I was like, Jesus. I don't think they said specifically what that. I would assume that was a horizontal severance, probably like probably not, because if it was like vertical, you would assume that would have caused some issues with the whole downloading a brain thing. Which we kind of got some of the insight about what happened to David from Peter, where he was basically explaining like, well, we've kind of been lying to you a lot longer than you think we have been. And they needed David's help because no one, like even the computer's algorithms and stuff, can't compete with how his mind works and what it does. So they needed this. But the problem, like at the beginning when they uploaded his brain, it worked well to some extent, but the problem was without his emotions, he wasn't fully. Once again, the human mind isn't complete without the heart to connect to it, because that was the whole point of like Steven saying like that's what separates the uploaded intelligence. So bit by bit, they return basically, using Kingdom Hearts examples of like his heart, his emotions to him. But eventually, and his work like sped up and he was getting better and better. But the problem is, the more that was happening, the more his memories were starting to return until he started wanting more. That's why he reached out to Maddie when he did. That's why up until now he hadn't reached out, because that was for Ellen. It's like, if this was really your dad, he would have reached out before now, like leaving us to suffer all this time. He would never do something that cruel. He didn't have much of a choice because he didn't remember you. He didn't have his emotions. He didn't have his heart. He didn't have his memories of who he was and what he had. But for him, it's like, I want my family. I want freedom. And so that's what, once again, Lori, it might be Lauren, but I think it is Lori, wanted for him as well. And that's what she wants as well. So. And when the time came, Pope went full-blown, supervillain, definitely like some Lex Luthor level supervillain, where it's like, yeah, we're not handing your husband over. We're not going to delete this. It's like, wait, what? Even Peter's like, no, you had me download. It's like, no, like the only way you're going to do your job and be truthful is when you think you're being truthful. So I needed you to think this was, it's like, no, your husband's our property. It's like, no, I have power of attorney over him. Yes, his body, not his mind. We will take your ass to court and prove to you that there's a big distinction between that. We have literally all the money and resources to keep this battle up forever. Do you? And it's like, no, like there's no way Ellen can compete against a large corporation like this, once again, with all this money and resources, and probably like 10 lawyers on staff ready to tear her apart. Especially even saying like, you don't want us to go to the narrative of, hey, this widow, it's kind of going a little hysterical, and now she wants to try and extort money from her husband's former employee. It's like, you don't want us to go through that narrative. I mean, you don't want your daughter dragged into that narrative too. Like, once again, it's like, yep. Like, it's like, yeah, let's drop the pretenses, go full-blown supervillain mode. But it's like, man, it's like, I got something for your ass. It's like, oh, cool, all your systems are down, and you're losing, millions. It's like, wait, what? It's like, oh, yeah, every second that's going by, you're losing millions upon millions. And it's like, wait, how does she do this? It's like, no, it's not her, it's Lori. It's like, she got us from the outside, so it's like, Peter's like, it's going to take me 5 or 6 minutes. Pope is like, what is it, 5 or 6? And he's like, 6. I'm like, good thing, give yourself the extra minute. But Maddie was able to just walk out of there with her dad. But Pope did say something which I think is going to be a major through line for this, is that basically humanity, this is some new territory that humanity isn't prepared for. And how does humanity typically respond to something they don't understand? With fear, and they'll look at something as a threat. I mean, because hell, even Ellen, like when she was first hearing all about this, what did she say? It's like, oh, like, well, you took whatever was left of my husband and you made a monster out of it, because she kept using this is on the modern aged Frankenstein type of stuff going on. So comparing like what they did to our husband to what Victor Frankenstein did to his monster, making his monster and everything. The big question of science of like, it's not a matter of could we, it's a matter of should we. But either way, Maddie and Ellen left with her dad, because for her, it's like, I'm getting dad back. I'm bringing him home with us. And so Lori ended up helping them set up a place to actually download, because the whole thing was like, right, they don't have what's necessary to save her dad. All they have is the raw data. They have nowhere to they don't have the systems necessary in place to kind of upload them. It's like, well, Lori set something aside. Once again, if it turns out to be Lauren, and I've been saying Lori the entire time, do forgive me. You know what I meant, sorry. She ends up downloading her father's information, and he contacts her, and he ends up pulling up the game and is like, right, you want to finish this adventure? Which I thought was pretty dope. And Maddie's so happy, but you can still see the reservation, because at first she's shocked, but then you see her kind of rein it back in, because even Ellen's still convinced this isn't really her husband. It's like, right, you're just kind of a soulless machine using his voice. You might have his memories, but you aren't actually him. Once again, it's just because she truly believes that, but also it's easier to believe that too. So I think she's definitely going to struggle a lot with this whole thing going forward, because Maddie's taking it as a blessing, but Ellen's seeing it more as a curse than a blessing. But also, Logarithm has an issue of we don't just have one, we have two not AIs, UIs out there in the world. Granted, once again, the Chanda situation is like, right, that's a whole different corporation. That's not even, once again, I don't think it is, but I think that's not even Logarithm. So there's two out there in the wild, and there's one that's out there. I mean, one that's there that they're not even aware of yet. But he's still kind of in captivity. The whole point is like to make you still like work. So you're kind of stuck in this like cycle of being like thinking you're still alive and you're just working on stuff. Like they're feeding you into a system where like they want you to continue working. It's like, you know, it's enslaving your mind to continue work. It's like, yeah, it's not, you can't even rest. You don't get any peace. They need you. You're just nothing more than a tool now. You know, poor Chanda. And the same thing was going to happen to Lori and David as well. So, and I'm wondering, is that the main through line? Like some of like the wild stuff we see. Like I wonder, is it all going to be in the guise and vein of that video game? I wonder, is that like whenever Maddie goes into, once again, just based on the trailer, I wonder, is that what it's like, that video game world, and they're adapting it for what they want. So like a lot, so that now those elements, I'm like, that is like really some like dot hack stuff in that moment, like when Maddie kind of visits her dad in those moments, which I'm sure the next episode, which is already out by the time I'm recording it, I'm assuming like some of that stuff is what we're going to really dive into in episode 3. Like I said, some of that stuff we saw in the trailer with her actually putting on like a VR set and kind of interacting with her dad. So it's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.